Hello, everybody. Hello. I'm excited because we're about to kick off our next ProveIt session. And this one's a little different because we actually have two companies presenting together today. Up first, we will have Dylan and Glenn from Abelara, who is a consulting firm that partners with end users to build strategy, the architecture, and the framework for digital transformation. Their goal isn't to stick around at your site forever. Rather, it's to enable your team to own and manage what gets built. Full accountability, full ownership, in-house. For the second company, we have Ricardo Santos from Tupanix, a systems integrator specializing in Industry 4 and IoT/OT integrations. They're the ones Abelara brings in as a trusted partner to execute on that blueprint. And for our fourth presenter, we have Dan Clark from Axelon. Now, what's funny is I had a chance to talk with Dylan before this session, and apparently he pulled a walker and threw out his entire presentation last night and redid the whole thing. Now, I had a sneak peek, and I kind of know what they're going to do, and trust me, you guys are in for a treat. It's very unique. So, let's first roll the video to learn a little bit more about them.
You're here because you care about the future of your factory. But here's the thing. No one else is responsible for that future. Not vendors, not integrators, not software. Now, there's a lot of great software, but when you buy solutions, your business depends on them. And whether you own them or not is where things start to break. When the people running the system don't own it or can't see it, accountability fades and improvement stalls. Because you can't improve what you can't see. And here's the solution. Treat your systems like products you own, with clear visibility and clear accountability. Because ProveIt isn't about the next tool. It's about proving what actually works. And what works is ownership.
And ownership starts with visibility. The more you see, the more you can improve. Welcome to Abelara's ProveIt session.
Please welcome to the stage, Abelara.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for spending 45 minutes with us. Before we get into the formal presentation, I want to serve a reminder to the audience. As part of ProveIt, we are here to solve problems, and as such, there were a whole bunch of fictional entities created that we were going to stream real data from, and we're going to show you real analyses here on site. We are all about to go into character. My name is Glenn Gardner, and I am proud to be the founder of Abelara in conjunction with my co-founder, Dylan. That's what I do in real life. However, for the next 30 minutes, I am proud to be the CEO of Happy Hour, a bottling plant that looks exactly like Enterprise B in all of the pre-work that you saw for this particular session. So I am pleased to meet you. My name is Glenn. I'm the president of Happy Hour. And what I'd like to share first is that I have a very big problem in my role as president. My first big problem is that I am running 5 different departments, each of them speaking their own language. The reason they speak their own language is that the foundational ideas that each of them worked through happened many, many years ago and has been field tested since then. So for example, finance. The foundation of finance were set in the late 1400s by a brilliant man named Lucas Pacioli. He had a problem. The problem that he faced was that everybody in the world was using cash flow accounting. Your accounting professor today will tell you that's not good because you don't actually know if you're profitable in any quarter when you use cash flow accounting. Sometimes you stock up intentionally, like before Halloween, you want to stock up a lot of candy inventory. Sometimes you want to buy big machines that you're going to use for 10 years, and in cash flow accounting, you don't know if you're doing well or poorly in any given quarter. The system that Mr. Pacioli came up with is simplicity itself. It's the most elegant system you'll ever find in finance. He simply said that there are only 5 things. The world is built of transactions. Those transactions need to debit and credit 5 different types of accounts. Specifically, those are revenues and expenses, and assets and liabilities and owner equity, and everything else is details. That is the most elegant system that humanity had ever created for tracking finance. So the next time you go to argue with your finance professional that you partner with, please know that the system that he or she is using was created over 500 years ago, has been tested in the entire economy of 500 years of humanity, which is basically everyone, and so there's a reason that they're sticking to certain financial principles. Similarly in engineering, if we move on to Emmy Noether. Emmy Noether is the most brilliant person that you have never heard of. Emmy Noether is who Albert Einstein said, I think his exact words were, Emmy Noether is the finest mind that humanity has ever created. He did not say that about me. However, if you are Emmy Noether and you are the finest mind in Einstein's opinion that humanity has ever created, you don't so much worry about stocking up on inventory before Halloween. That's not the biggest problem on your plate. Instead, she went ahead and created a new mathematics that unified Einstein's relativity, Newtonian mechanics, and created mathematics out of thin air, which is now known as group theory. Nobody had ever done such a thing in the history of humanity. She unified basically all of the knowledge of science and mathematics and engineering in one person. All of us engineers today rest on her shoulders. She was a true genius, and we are her beneficiaries. Now, moving on, talk about historic events. In 1982, get this, there was a consultant that had a good idea. That had never happened in the history of consulting until that moment. It's true, it's true. That consultant was Keith Oliver. He had a problem, which was he was having difficulty describing to his manufacturing companies that he was consulting with that the world had changed. Usually, or shall I say before 1980, it was fairly common to be what we say is vertically integrated. You brought in pretty raw materials, and then you machined them and assembled them and finished them and did all sorts of things in-house. In the 1980s, that started to change. The supply chain started to specialize, and it turned out that now it was very real that your suppliers were an extension of your company. Their success was your success, their quality failures were your quality failures, but we didn't have a language to talk about that. Enter Mr. Oliver, who invented the term supply chain, which didn't exist until then. It was the perfect term to say that, hey, you have a supply chain. It's the right metaphor. It's a link of chains. And ultimately, it ends at the end user, but every link in that chain is critical. People simply weren't thinking in those terms before he coined that. Moving on. I admit this is a nod to this crowd. In operations, there are several different folks that I could choose as foundational. I've chosen to go with a technologist that all of you will know, which is Dick Morley. Dick Morley is widely credited with creating the PLC in 1968 specifically, when he was at Modicon. I could have also chosen, instead of a technologist, somebody that focused more on process. Had I done that, I would have thought about Taichi Ono with lean manufacturing, or I would have moved over to MRP. MRP was created by Orlicki, if you're familiar with Mr. Orlicki. Those two were the foundational processes. The foundational technology that we use today is the PLC. All of them still exist in very close to their original form in all of our industries. Sidebar, if you think that you're both lean and MRP at the same time, or if you implement a methodology called lean MRP, these are diametrically opposite things. Please talk to us afterwards. That can't happen. Moving on. Maintenance. I am proud to be a member of the vibration community. I love predictive maintenance. It is not the focus of this show. I hope that it will be next year. But our industry was founded in the late 1970s by a gentleman named Stanley Nolan. Stanley Nolan did a huge study. The problem that he faced was that machines don't fail the same way every time, and he didn't have a language to express that. So you might use terms today like infant mortality or the bathtub curve. Before Mr. Nolan, everybody thought that a machine ran for, say, 5 years and then failed like clockwork. And all you had to do was do maintenance at 4 years and 11 months. After he explained the science of how machines actually fail, an entire industry of predictive maintenance and the CMMS systems that go with it was born that took into account that not all failures are time-based. In fact, very few are. Many are infant, many have a bathtub curve. All of that language rests on the study of Stanley Nolan. Now, that was a lot of history. Why did I bother to do that at a technology conference when we're just about to bury ourselves in data? I do that because if you rest in one of these columns, if one of these is your native department, and you're having great difficulty with a stubborn person in another one that is not willing to see things your way, number one, they may be a jerk. Believe it or not, they're out there. That does exist. It's also possible that that person has studied the history of their domain. When you look at when these problems were fundamentally solved, all of them have been field tested, have proven it, if you will, for over 50 years in the real world. So when you're having difficulty getting supply chain, for example, to speak the language of engineering or finance, it might be that they've studied their history and they have great reverence for the 50-year legacy and proven methodologies that have been in the field, and that's the source of the difficulty in interacting. So the good news is, Happy Hour as a company is a utopia where we all get along fantastically and we all respect all of those historical roots. However, we still have a data problem. So now let me bring this right down into the tactical level. I am facing a specific market problem. My market problem is that I have lower cost competitors that are starting to steal share from me. I absolutely have to lower prices, otherwise I'll continue to lose market share in a vicious cycle. This is a cost problem. For right now, in my company's life stage, cost is the #1 priority. My team and I must take cost out of our product line in order to survive. So what I've done is I called up a gentleman named Dylan Dufresne, and I said, I need your help. I need a better architecture so I can figure out where my costs are leaking. Dylan came in at a cost of $25,000. He did a 1-week workshop, and because he was fluent in each of the domains that we just discussed, he was able to surface where we needed better connections of the data and where the problem most likely lie. I was grateful that Dylan had done that, and true to form, Dylan was neutral. It's not that Dylan was without opinions. He was neutral in that he would recommend any software that solved my particular problem. Once he understood my problem, he had very strong opinions about what software and what methods would be best to fix the problem. So after that, we were thrilled to bring in a system integrator, specifically Tuponix. Tuponix then came in to help us implement Dylan's recommendations. At this moment, I would like to pass the microphone over to the system integration partners at Tuponix.
Congratulations, Mr. Customer. You made a great choice on hiring Abelara and us to deliver this to you. So let's go ahead to our demo pretty soon. So, okay, now we know who the customer is, okay? Now we know what problem they're trying to solve, reduce cost. So they challenged us with waste. So is not really sure on how much water is going down to the drain, on how much water it's overfilling. That's our task, okay? Now, Abelara cut through all the noise. They made my job really easy, so I just have to deliver on it, okay? So let's go to it right now. We chose to use,
I chose. Happy Hour chose.
Happy Hour, all right, all right. On site 2, to work with site 2 on Enterprise B, does anyone know how many lines do we have on site 2, Enterprise B?
3?
No, less than 3? That's easy, all right. 2 lines, they have 2 lines in there. They wanna track, thank you. They wanna track waste, okay? So, we walked the walk, now we talked the talk, now time to walk the walk. We're boots on the ground, hands on, let's do it. So with Litmus Edge, we installed this OS on bare metal. We got $1,000 industrial PC, we put that in there, and now we are configuring our drives. We make the connect, okay? So remember, they don't have SCADA on this site here, so we are making all the connections here using Allen Bradley, Siemens, all the drives, in this case, in the virtual factory, using the MQTT. All right, We had all the metadata, we made all the calculations. So, because we know CPG, we know food and beverage, okay? So, one of the tasks that I have, it is to grab how many bottles, good bottles we are producing. So, good counts, right? So, how many bottles is going through the filler, less the scrap, less the rejects. How many, what's our totalizer? How much product is going through the line, okay? So now we're gonna look into the flow meters. We get the raw value from enterprise B. We need to aggregate, right? So we need to see how much product is flowing through over time. So now we made a good graphic in there. We know our SKU number. We know that we are running 500 milliliters. If you watch our live stream, you will learn a little bit more about how to fill a bottle, how to perfectly fill a bottle. 500 milliliters, we put 8 milliliters of required overfill. Our target volume is 508. Anything above 508 is bad. It's considered excess overfill. We're gonna show that to you. Quality is getting sample every hour and it's showing 520. All right, so we are already above target. Now I'm showing you live on how much product we are putting is excess overfill. All right, we found out the excess overfill. Everything else we considered spillage. That's actually how much product is going down to the drain. They told me a dollar amount, okay? So this is some dollar signs on how much their product cost. So in the last hour, they are putting, you're wasting $551. Now we have live data. You no longer have lag indicator. You have a live data for real-time decisions, right? Before it was just a straight pipe pouring down to the drain. Now you can pull a lever and make the difference. Now, this factory, we calculated about 11% waste, okay? So, real factory, real application. I've done almost 20 of those already. Good number, below 12% for sure. A very lean factory will operate around 3 to 4% waste. Anything above 10 is bad, right? So, this is after this, we're gonna calculate return of investment. So, let's go back here. You could help me get there. All right. So, how do we solve? We connect, collect, store, visualize the effort, implementation with Litmus Edge. It costs $29,000 investment in 5 weeks. The return of investment on this one, it is a 3-month payback period. So we wanted to keep the momentum going. They did the workshop. Everybody's excited. So now, about 10% cost reduction. Annual savings of $292,000, okay? So, that's phase 1. We are all happy. So now, we're gonna go to phase 2. We prove it value. Well, I think we prove it right here. Phase 2, we were challenged with enterprise data. So now, we need to get all the factors into abstract the data the same way so we can work that out on the enterprise level. And then I'm just gonna show you really quick here how we did that. All right, so Dylan's architecture with ignition. Okay, all right. Dylan architecture with, okay, it's in there, so how do you do that? Oh, gotcha. All right, technology.
Doing great, Ricardo.
All right, all right. So, they bought the SCADA. I had this open right here, so I can go to, all right, so we have a stack. I'm just gonna go through this super quick here. We closed it a few tabs. No problem. So this is the full stack that we are deploying in there on phase 2. And now we have our MES. So remember, you can buy a SCADA and we can build an MES. We gave a free framework on this MES. So now we install Ignition. We are building an MES on a DB right here, using a Postgres. Okay? So now, remember, Ignition, open platform, an open MES. So now they can have this. So now you can take control over it. So this, all the KPIs, all their metrics, everything is open, composable. You can do whatever you want with it. So let me just see the front end right here, launch real quick. And we are proving it live. See if I know where to click. All right. So you're given all these templates. So, okay, so this is perspective screens. Now they can take control over. So this is theirs. This is no longer mine, okay? So they don't need to call me back because Dylan and Abelara suggested that they install DevOps with Exelon. So now you can have the keys, Mr. Customer. Congratulations, we prove value to you. Now you can take it over. It's all yours.
I appreciate that, Ricardo. So let me frame what's happening from my perspective as the president of Cappy Hour. I had a problem. It was not a cultural problem. Because I've created a cultural utopia at my company, everybody gets along. However, they don't share data that they need. I had Dylan, a consultant from Abelara, come in, and I paid him $25K, so I spent $25K there. Dylan told us, here is the system that you can use to stitch together each of your different data silos. Note that he didn't say, you need one system that literally consumes the entirety of everything you're doing, because that's a silly solution. A real solution to our real problem was stitching together just the right pieces. You don't have to integrate the entirety of every single domain. That's just not a thing. Because Dylan is ambivalent about who does the implementation, he's just there for the end user, he was more than happy to hand it to a system integrator. That system integrator, Ricardo, did a fantastic job and proved return on my investment of $39K to the system integrator. Now I've got a real solution. I know where the waste is. The waste is in one particular spot. It's in the filling station. I fixed that. I paid back all of that investment within 3 months. And more importantly to me, I don't have to lay anybody off. I was in a position where if I didn't fix this cost problem and stat, I was gonna have to start laying people off. It was simply the nature of the business. It's the only way to survive. I do not have to do that now, and I'm super grateful to Ricardo and Dylan for the fact that I don't have to do that. But even better, now they've laid a foundation. On that foundation, I can go to my internal engineers and say, this is fabulous. What else can we connect? What other value can we create? And so I looked around and I tried to find the best looking engineer that I had. When I couldn't find them, I went to Dan and I said, Dan, what can you do to help me?
Absolutely. So Glenn came to me. I was sitting on the bucket in the filling department, and I'm trying to figure out what's going wrong with the system. There are some filling downtime issues that we're having. And so Glenn challenged me to say, hey, how can you visualize this? How can you capture this knowledge? The machines aren't giving us this information. So the first thing I did is, one, I went to lunch. And while I was at lunch, I was thinking about this. And I had an Ignition 8152 gateway that I've been playing around with. I don't know Ignition that well. So the cool part about what's going on is that Abelara suggested that we should purchase a product from Exelon called DevOS. That product is an AI-enabled co-pilot for Ignition, and it enabled me to go ahead while I was eating my sandwich, and I went ahead and I started to build something to track my manual downtime. So let's go jump into my virtual server that's hosting this, and we can kind of look at what the conversation that I was having with the AI to build what I was doing. The first thing I really said to it was, hey, there's some data out there. We were given by the system integrator a great system. I think there's something in there. Can you explore the Postgres database? Can you find something for me? And as it was looking through the tables, it found that there was entry point for downtime reasons. There was a table that defined my downtime reasons. I just didn't have a way for the operators on the line to tie that in. So I asked the Copilot and said, can you build me my named queries? So it went ahead and it built the named queries for me. And if I look at it there, I can actually go ahead and see that it built me named queries for the different pieces of it to go pull the data. Once I had that, I took another bite of my sandwich and I started typing some more. And I said, now I need a string that's going to visualize this, that I can put into the system to go ahead and do that. So let's take a look at what it built for us. And here, if we take a look at this in the frame, let's scroll the chat over, we can actually see that it built me a point where it brings me to the current date. I can go back in time and look at post data, but it's giving me the events that are streaming from the state log right now. I can now go back and have an interview as an engineer. I can go talk to the operators and say, hey, there was an event at this point in the day. What happened? What should we classify that as? And I can actually go in here now and select the various different rows of what happened. I can then go ahead and select my downtime reason and assign it. So that's one change that I'm able to do very quickly and go back to the floor and continue to work on the machines. At this point now, I'm going to take this information here. I'm going to use the Axelon AMP product, application management platform, to actually promote this through a PR process so that my boss can review this, I can go back to doing what I'm doing, and then at the end of the day, we can merge that change directly into the gateway that Tupinex gave us. So we're going to take what I did on the side, and we're going to push it in there. So Glenn, there you go, sir.
Thank you. I've
Have
changed
fun.
my mind. You are indeed the best looking engineer on staff. Well done. I appreciate it. Okay, so we're coming to the end of our fable, and I am really happy now. I'd like to retell the story of what you just saw play out. We started with my problem, our company's problem. We have an imperative to reduce costs, otherwise a vicious cycle will ensue. We're going to lose market share, and I have to lay off people. The problem is I needed cost to come out fast. So I spent $25K for a 3-day workshop, and then I spent $39K for a quick, good solution to implement a solution to my problem specifically, which is get cost out quickly. I was so grateful to Tupinex for doing that, and now I had a wonderful thing. I had the start of a data structure which would allow me to make further progress using my in-house team as represented by Dan. This is fabulous. And if you heard the language that Dan was using, he very naturally stepped through all 5 of the categories that we discussed earlier. He was reducing cost, that's a financial metric. I need higher gross margins. He was helping me do that. He was talking about the distinction between downtime. We need to increase OEE and get more revenue out the door. That also helps gross margin, but there's 2 languages. There's operations and there's maintenance. The 2 reasons that any machine goes down is number 1, it's not operationally ready, or number 2, it's not physically capable of doing its job. That's a maintenance and reliability problem. If supply chain is not ready for our increased capacity, we won't have enough raw material coming in the door and we'll be suddenly constrained in supply chain. Supply chain needs to link in as well. And engineering now has the ability to develop new products because we've unlocked additional capacity. That means we can do a lot of fun things that we wanted to do before, but I couldn't invest because I was under such cost constraints. I am a happy man today. All of my systems are talking to one another. It did not cost an enormous amount of resource, and now all of my internal teams are building and thinking in these terms. Gentlemen, I thank you for your work, and we will break out of the script now while we pass the microphone to Dylan.
So as Amy said earlier, coming back on, we had a very different demo, or 12, prepared for this. And being indecisive, as much as Ricardo and Tupinex and everybody helping us would probably wish we weren't, we ended up building a lot of different demos, trying to figure out what story to tell here today. And the choice was made to tell the story from the end user's perspective, from the ground floor, connect, collect, store, from 3 people who have been end users in the past. Glenn has been the president of a large laser manufacturer. He has faced the problems he identified as the CEO many times in his life as the proper end user himself. Ricardo has been an engineer at an actual beverage bottling company. And Dan has also been an engineer on the plant floor of an end user. So we have heard their problems from their perspective 3 different ways and how they solved them with the experience of being an end user, but now coming from the lens of an integrator and a software vendor and a consultant. Some of the stuff we had already prepared, I'm going to go over at rapid fire, and if you have questions, you can find us in the booth. Immediately following this, one quick housekeeping thing. Glenn is running a workshop on predictive maintenance and vibration. 15 minutes after we get off stage, he will be in one of the workshop rooms, ready to run that. And I will be in the workshop room, I believe F, with Fuse, immediately following this. And then as soon as those workshops are done, Glenn and I will be in the booth. But while we're in those workshops, Dan and Ricardo will be manning the booth and taking all questions you may have from this demo. But with that, some of the stuff that we did that we haven't shown you here today is the full ignition scale-out architecture with 5 gateways running on the gateway area network without MQTT, showing a full unified namespace in ignition alone. We have built a custom Postgres MCP tool that I'm calling PG LLNs. Thought that was kind of funny. And that is open source and on GitHub, ready for anybody to use on any Postgres database they might want to use it on. We also have metadata injected into every UNS topic on the entirety of Enterprise B 2 different ways. One was timestamp, value, and quality payloads, pretty simple and lean. And the other one was larger, more asset-driven full payloads that are a little bit heavier on the wire, but add more context. We also published SESMI profiles. We did machine identification for every single asset in Enterprise B across all 3 sites. We published all of the data that we did back to the UNS, which we can show you in MQTT Explorer in the booth, but we figured you're kind of sick of that by now. We custom built a MES. It was a small subset of the MES. It was just logging and history. All we did was log counts, log KPIs, log states, and production runs in the anticipation of building the further functionality out in future phases. We added additional sensors to the tank so that we could figure out the live in-process inventory. We had weight, we had temperature, and we had flow, but we didn't have pressure or levels. So we couldn't track our inventory throughout the process in real time. So we added those, added alarms, and added all that extra context to the tanks and the vats in the system across all 3 sites. We aggregated KPIs by work order using Flow software. And to get to the cost calculations that Ricardo showed in Litmus, we used Fuse to integrate to SAP to give us the cost per milliliter per product. We did a supply integration with Opto22 and their C-Store demo that showed a warehouse management application that we built in Fuse, integrating and sending products to the stores based on their live consumption. And on the drive down here, in just a few hours, we built a N8N workflow for agentic agents that would allow the agents using that MCP tool that we talked about earlier to understand and learn from the UNS and the database to be able to add commentary from each of the 5 perspectives that Glenn shared on stage here and comment as the CEO and give a presidential debriefing every day.
That's incredible. That's still incredible. You didn't hear me. How about now? That is incredible. Thank you, Dylan. But I do want to make sure we have time to ask you guys some questions. So everybody, yep, the Slido QR code is up there. But I have one really quick for Axelon. So is the cost of your product included in what we saw on the slide, or is that additional?
Additional.
Okay. Can you give us a sense of what that might be?
Sure. So we've got a cost for compute on our application management platform that's roughly in the $50,000 to $75,000 range. That actually manages the entire DevOps orchestration. You get actual semantic difference between things. You can spin up clones. You get real-time failover. At ICC last year, we showed where we kicked the database and the end user never even saw it system to system because we can gatekeep that and keep it clean. The DevOS product is in beta right now. We're still figuring out pricing, so I don't want to quote on that one right now.
Okay, fair enough. Let's see. So, I guess a question for you, Dylan.
All right.
Could any Aviva tools have a place in your stack? Why or why not?
At this point, I am not familiar enough with too many of the modern Aviva tools to be able to properly answer that. I know they've recently done a changing in their pricing model and have had some recent updates that I'm probably not familiar enough with to properly comment on that. But from some of the stuff I have seen, I have reason to believe they would be. And if that were a request from a client, I would definitely do my due diligence and further research into that topic.
Awesome. Do you guys have any tools that streamline the migration of any vision process graphics to your platform?
I do not. They are very different applications with very different file structures on the back end. In theory, and I guess what I have done before, I wouldn't call them tools that we have necessarily, but you could take the file exports from the project file from Vision and give them to an LLM and ask them to recreate the JSON in perspective. That works fairly well, and it would help streamline them, but it won't get you 100%.
Absolutely. We have another question for you, Axelon.
Yes.
Is it possible to generate any perspective screens live with your product?
Yes. Because of the way things work, it takes time, and they only gave me a few minutes.
Yep.
So I had to do it ahead of time. Actually, a few minutes before this.
I do want to add, ICC this last year, Axelon did do a live demo with Axel that I believe showed some live screen development.
Yes.
So if you do want to see a live demo of Axelon, we can go back to those recordings from ICC ProveIt.
Yeah, and you can find me on LinkedIn. I do live demos on there where I walk and show the entire walkthrough. I have a video up there right now on OE dashboard. It roughly represents 30 minutes, and I get it done in about 5 of condensing the time of the video. But absolutely, find me in the booth and talk to me about it.
Awesome. Can we get the questions back on the bottom one? While that's going, I have another question. Oh, go ahead.
Amy, would you mind if I added just a touch on the Aviva question while they're re-queuing it?
By all means.
Excellent, excellent. So the answer is yes, of course, there could be a place for Aviva in our stack. One of the things we admire about Aviva is it has a really broad portfolio. If you think about going from greenfield to construction to operating, Aviva has dozens upon dozens of software offerings that start with designing a plant from scratch, so P&IDs and isometrics, et cetera, then moving on to how are you going to actually construct the plant, and then moving from there into operating the plant. So the way we think about Aviva is they cover all of that territory from design to construct to operate/maintain, we'll say both. And they have so many software products in each of those categories that it's hard to say yes, no to any individual one. But I can say for sure, the design basis of a plant is directly relevant to me when I'm trying to optimize a process. And so that's really valuable data. I would go to Aviva and or another EPC-style design software package to get that type of data to enhance the context in which we're working.
If you haven't had your question answered yet, please resubmit.
All right. I actually still have it here on my phone. So, another question for you, Dylan.
What do you got?
Somebody asked, why Litmus for Connect, Collect, Store, and then Ignition for MES? Why not do all Ignition or all Litmus?
So through many different client engagements over the last year or so that we've been doing these architectures and consulting workshops, a pattern that I've found that has emerged has pretty consistently been too many vendors in the stack. So when we're talking to the CTOs, the CIOs who are responsible for hundreds of sites each, 2 or 3 vendors per site that are different from 2 or 3 vendors on every other site add up fast. So to reduce the number of vendors total has been a priority at the enterprise level fairly frequently. And with that, a pattern that we've found that works very well has been Litmus for Connect, Collect, Store on the plant floor, OT integration, and Fuse for IT integration. Same concept, but with SAP, your ERPs, your supply chain software, your QMS, all the big stuff there. And then next to those exist things like Ignition and Flow Software and HiByte and vibration sensors and Axelon and all these different tools, MaintainX and other people I'm forgetting at this moment, but many different partners and friends. Whether or not we're partnered with them, there's many different softwares that can fill those gaps on the side based on various problems that may be presented during these engagements and identified during these engagements. So Litmus, as that foundational edge on the OT side, has been the most robust option that can handle the most use case consistently. And a lot of tools like to ignore the PLCs and the robots, the native drivers and device connectivity. And in our space, there's actually relatively few tools that handle that very well, if at all. And Litmus is one of those that also does other steps.
Thank you. Very informative, Dylan. Can you remind the audience what was the total cost and time to implement the solution?
So the solution shown here with Litmus was actually all done by Ricardo and his team, so I'll let him answer that one.
All right, thank you. Yeah, so the Litmus one was $29,000 in 5 weeks. So that includes 4 weeks of development and 1 week on site for data validation.
But that does not include Litmus, correct?
That does not include Litmus. So
Okay.
that
The
would
ballpark
be,
if we included licensing?
so it depends on which one we go with, the 17,000 or the 37,500 a year for the first site. But just remember,
Somewhere
that's not
between
linear.
50 and 75 for the first site, depending on licensing options.
Yeah, I think we got into 73,000 all in. So
Awesome.
And can you just restate the problem that you solved? Like, what was the ROI on that investment?
Sure. So we, on that site, so some sites we don't have like SCADA level, so that's site 2. Again, we need some quick time to value and do something really quick. So what we did was collecting the number of bottles, the total flow of the total volume of the product going through the line, and then through calculations, we were able to identify how much waste we have. So how much product they're wasting, either down to the drain or overfilling a bottle. So, which we did a really extensive live stream, and then we see the implications on it. So on a pallet, for example, by reducing the amount of product that you access overfill a bottle, we can even fit one more pallet into a truck, which you go down to logistics right now. So it's another thing that we can improve. So
Awesome, thank you. Dylan.
Yes.
More architecture questions for you.
Yes.
Somebody in the audience said this was really cool, but their CIO says this is probably be too many things. What do you think would be like a minimum viable tech stack if somebody wanted to get started? Obviously, that's hard to answer without knowing their details, but any suggestions?
It's going to depend on the problems and the needs at hand. But going back to that pattern I mentioned earlier, you can do a lot of this. We can probably solve 70 to 80% of problems in some capacity with just Litmus and Fuse, connecting everything from the PLCs to the ERPs and everything in between. And usually you get a third vendor there. Oftentimes we find Ignition for visualization and things like that on the plant floor.
Cool. Oh, somebody's asking, do you need more integrator partners?
So how
Always
we
welcome.
handle integration partners, we're always looking for more. Obviously, we have people we like working with that we know, we trust, and have vetted. And generally speaking, we try to match the right integration partners to the right industries and the right verticals. So at Abelara, between these skill sets of myself and Glenn, I come from a very hybrid batch-heavy background. I've done a little bit of discrete, a little bit of heavy batch, but I've mostly lived in that hybrid middle ground. Glenn has existed at both extremes. He has done heavy batch with DCS systems, and he has done a lot of straight, discrete, even manual assembly. And between the two of us and our skill sets and our histories, we are able to go very wide, especially once we start adopting first principles. And that allows us to help the largest and widest audience possible. And then we work with various integration partners and software partners that are best in class in their specific verticals and categories. And we will always do what we can to partner with people we know, we trust, and can work with well. Ricardo, ironically with this one, we had already chosen to work with him for ProveIt before all this came out, but the moment we saw Enterprise B was a bottling facility, we knew we picked the right guy, because he literally did 20 of them this last year. And this is not, he was at an end user for the same thing, that's his specialty now as an integrator, so it worked out perfectly. And similar stories would play out with various integration partners, and we would try to flex our integrators that we trust. And so we might take Ricardo into various other industries and go from there.
Okay.
Now, this is ProveIt, of course, so I gotta ask, did you guys happen to use a SESMI profile?
We did. We used the machine identification profile. We used UDTs and Ignition to model the data at the edge, and then we used HiBytes to publish that profile to the broker. Using the definition of the pre-made machine identification profile that SESMI offered.
Awesome. Let's see. Any chance we can scroll those questions? We answered them. We already asked them all.
I can take the hard one. What are you actually selling me? What are your beginning client engagement KPI, et cetera?
Perfect. Yeah. So, what are you selling us? What are your beginning client engagement KPIs and success criteria? I don't want to hear dollars.
What the heck even is Abelara? What is it that you sell? So, what we did is a very common problem that the end user faces is coming to a conference like this, having amazing discussions with 51 different vendors. There's exactly 51 vendors on the show floor. And then on the plane home, when your boss texts you and says, what are we going to do? You're like, I have no idea how to even fit the puzzle together on what our next step should be. What we've done is we build a specific methodology, the Abelara Ascent methodology. It takes into account all 5 of the native languages of the organization that you saw, and it identifies below that several architectural trade-off decisions that can go one way or another at any given company. At your company, you have a brownfield engagement. By definition, you're here because you're running a plant. You are constrained by whatever is installed today in the brownfield, and you can layer on top various other solutions, and it's very hard to make sense of which of the 51 are most relevant for you. We developed a methodology to make that systematic and unbiased, and we share with you the pros and cons of all the architectural decisions and all of the software packages that you could adopt separately from that. As such, we are vendor neutral, we are agnostic about which serves you the best, but we do have strong opinions. Our North Star is the end user, and we will gladly specifically recommend the vendor that we believe best suits you. That is the service that we provide. And you said you don't want to hear numbers, but it's $25K. $25K, you get Dylan for a week. He'll tell you all of that, and he'll give you a good roadmap. And then if you want to implement, go to whoever you would like, ourselves, our partners, and we are happy with it.
Yep, and I'll tell you one last piece on that is the core philosophy of everything we do here at Abelara is about ownership and accountability of the end users for their own products and processes and projects internally. So one of the core beliefs we have is that every project, everything that is being built for or by an end user, by an integrator, whoever they happen to be partnering with, is a product that that end user is left with at the end of the day. And internal to the end user, we are looking to enable and build the skill sets to internally manage those projects, manage those products, and manage the teams that happen to be implementing them.
Awesome. All right, I think we have time for one more quick question.
All right.
I'll be fast. Why did you use Postgres instead of standard SQL?
Standard SQL costs money, and Microsoft licensing is painful. Postgres is more performant in most metrics that we deal with in manufacturing and comes with no licensing cost.
Timescale, hypertable.
Yeah. Alex, please come join us. Please come join us.
All right, I guess we're going to get a group photo.
all right.
But,
I think that's what we got.
yes, so that concludes the session. We're now going to start our 15-minute break.